Alex sat outside in the garden of his neighbor, Sarah. She had invited him over for some company, and he had been all too glad to do so. After all, Sarah was a single mother, raising a young baby by herself following the sudden departure of her former husband. In fact, the baby was sleeping in its pram nearby as Alex sat at a bench. The baby pram was very old, and as a result, Alex couldn't get a very good look at the sleeping infant, curiosity beginning to get the better of him. He and Sarah had always been good friends, but it came to his attention that he never did see her baby. It always seemed to be sleeping in that pram, and Sarah would warn him not to wake it. Glancing over to the house and noticing Sarah busying herself with preparing snacks, Alex got to his feet and moved over to the pram, glancing inside. When he glanced in, his eyes grew wide with shock and he stumbled back, his heart racing in his chest. Alex wasted little time in grabbing his stuff and trying to make a hasty retreat. However, the only way out was through Sarah's house. Alex was too overwhelmed with fear to reason and soon barged his way past Sarah, shoving her aside as she asked what was wrong. The last thing Alex heard was the sound of a baby crying. He never looked back. His heart was already pounding in his chest and he broke into a full-out dash. Alex didn't stop until he reached his house and locked the doors, finally collapsing on the seat as he tried to reason with himself, yet he couldn't. He kept shaking as visions of that baby flooded his mind as vivid as the moment he laid eyes on it. The skin, the mouth. Oh God, those eyes would haunt Alex forever. Suddenly the phone rang and Alex nearly jumped out of his skin. Eventually, answering the phone in a shaking voice, to his horror, Sarah was on the other end.
"Alex, I told you not to wake the baby. I told you."
However, Sarah was cut off short as Alex quickly hung up. It was just too much for him. Sarah was clearly angry, but Alex was too scared to care. He considered calling the cops until he thought on it. They'd think he was insane, and even if they investigated, there had been no crime. In fact, as the rush of fear slowly began to fade, Alex felt sick to his stomach. Here he was, a full-grown man, acting like a maniac all because of a baby. A harmless baby. Sure, it was strange, disturbing. Yet as Alex's mind finally began to recover, he felt guilt. Perhaps the baby had a defect. Maybe it was sick. Perhaps Sarah never wanted him to know, fearing he'd have a reaction like this. Alex sighed a little, thinking on how he had practically shoved Sarah aside without even waiting for an explanation. She probably thought he was crazy. As he leaned back on his chair, he began to feel that way too. The phone rang again. This time Alex answered, speaking without thinking. "Sarah, I'm sorry, Only Alex's eyes grew wide once more as he was cut off mid-sentence by the sound of gurgling sounds, much like a baby trying to form words, followed by a high-pitched cry that made Alex drop his phone as he jerked in surprise.
"I told you not to wake the baby. I told you."
Sarah's voice spoke out from the phone as it lay on the ground. Alex stumbled over to switch it off as more gurgling and crying followed. Alex was now truly terrified. He didn't care if they thought he had to get help. He dialed 911 and tried to calm himself, if only to stop shaking within moments. A voice spoke out.
911, what's your emergency?
"Hello? Listen, this is going to sound crazy, but I need the police or something. Alex began, only to be cut off once more as the voice interrupted.
"You woke the baby, Alex. She warned you."
Alex threw the phone away as the voice faded to familiar gurgling and crying. Getting to his feet, Alex stumbled across the room and headed for the hall. Then he felt two tiny hands clamp around one of his ankles as he fell to the ground and cried out. Miranda sat outside in the garden of her neighbor, Sarah, still wearing the black dress she had worn to Alex's funeral. As Sarah came out with drinks, she too was wearing a black dress, and several other mourners moved around inside the house. As usual, the old pram lay to one corner as Miranda looked to Sarah and spoke out. "It's just so sudden. I can't believe he's gone." She began to weep, covering her face with her hands. Sarah was quick to comfort Miranda, wrapping her arm around her shoulder. As she knelt down and whispered quietly, she began to gently lift Miranda up and guide her towards the house. "Please, Miranda. I know it hurts. I miss him too. Let's go inside. We don't want to wake the baby."